Hey all, super happy to be here on this Thursday. Um, Laura and I, our incredible Laura, decided that we're going to hop on and answer some questions that people have asked about the trauma training. So, if there's any questions that you guys have about the trauma training, hey, hi Laura,
Hello. Hi, hi. This is like very close to my face.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Let me just turn it up a little. Okay, can you hear me okay? Is the sound fine? Okay, perfect. I know we've had some like sound issues in the past, so. Okay. Yeah, so I know that we've been like talking about the trauma course. I've helped you a tiny bit with it with like some of the tweaks, and I know a lot of people have questions about it. So we thought to just like hop on here and we do like kind of like an interview style with you and ask some questions that I think maybe are common questions that we're getting from people, and hopefully it can be helpful just to anyone who's curious about the trainings we offer at Integrative. Um, and yeah, just hear from you about the course.
Laura's our master of efficiency. If anyone knows, like Laura's our incredible intake manager and practice manager at Integrative Therapy. And one of the things that I noticed if you reached out about a training or if you're part of the practice as a client or anyone is that Laura usually, so what she's been doing, right, has been responding to questions, gathering the common questions, and we decided will be most useful to answer any questions. If there's anyone who has a question, you can add here, send an email. We are working on this next cohort. So, yeah, what are the questions, Laura? Where should we start? Where shall we begin?
Yeah. Well, first, I just want to say that I have taken part of the course, and so I have some insights as well. Um, and I just want to kind of, I don't know, like affirm you, I guess, and just say like how incredible it was. Just the parts that I did get to see and take part in. There are just some things that I mean, I don't know, that I wouldn't have ever thought of without you sharing it. And I don't want to like give the course away or anything like that, but there are just some like really implicit pieces that you can't always like just like, I don't know, type up and like put in a course to teach someone. It's really more about the connection and like the nuance stuff where it's like, this is a really crazy case, and then you have consultation with someone and you're able to give like really nuanced feedback. And I feel like that is so invaluable. Like I just saw how people really I don't know, like clung to that. Like that was it's such a beautiful part of the course is the consultation piece. And I know we at our practice are so protective over our clinicians about like not burning out. And it's just, I can't imagine being a trauma therapist. Like the amount that you guys hold is just like the weight of the world. So to have like weekly or biweekly or whatever it will be this round, I know we're doing it a little differently.
Yeah.
Um, just to have that connection time and that consult with you, I think is just really, really invaluable for some of those like implicit pieces.
Yeah. What was something that you learned for yourself from the course? I'm curious before we go
Say
into
it
this.
again. What's the question?
Something that like you learned just as a human being.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about this actually, and it was cool to like go through my notes and like see how much I learned because it was actually so much information. It's like hard to process all at once because it's so rich. Um, but one thing that really stuck with me that I had never actually named before was you talked at one point, I don't remember which section it was in, but you talked about that there's this like energy sometimes in the room, and how that really matters and how therapists should be like sniffing that out and picking up on it. And I've felt that energy before just in my encounters with people, or my therapist or whoever, um, but never been able to actually like name it and put like a word to it and say, oh, that's actually, there is something there. And I know there's something there. I just don't know what it is, or it's just a feeling or a sense of something's off. Um, and it sounds really like I don't know, it sounds amateur or something, but it was so meaningful to me because it like
Yeah,
validated something in me where I was like, oh wow, I didn't know that that was like a real thing, and I just now recognized it.
yeah. I love that you say that. I think one of the important pieces of, first of all, of course, some of it, because I know you met some of the people in the cohort and relationships with them. Um, I think the thing that you're talking about, the piece, we shifted this format a little bit. In the past, it was a training where it was once we'd meet for an hour. And because I'm the kind of person who likes to over deliver, I put a ton of content into like an 8-week program. We ended up shifting this 8-week program into a 12-week program where I gave just 4 extra Zoom sessions. But the feedback was is that, you know, the clinicians really wanted much more personalized time talking about complexities in cases, practicing, which we'll talk about soon, like certain interventions, because we really have to practice it, right? And so I think that's the reason why we made it a little lengthier, to really make sure, like for my own integrity, I only want to run a course or a training if people really get what they are looking for out of it, or they get the most out of it. What you're talking about, Laura, I think which is the most important piece, is essentially you're talking about that sixth sense, which we always talk about. Like, what makes one therapist or what makes one clinician so much more skilled, or so much more efficient, I should say, than somebody else, right? We're always about therapy, really, like, it's a relationship. It very much is about improving our clinical outcomes, making sure we can help our clients. And one of those invisible skills, which is what you're talking about, is essentially like having that sixth sense, being able to pick up on or sniff, right? There's reading the body language, but there's also being able to name, hey, something in the room feels a little different today, right? Not like saying like, hey, I can tell that you're angry, or hey, there's a highly sexual energy here, or are you like, distracted, or are you totally dissociated? Not at all in that kind. But being able to name the implicit, I think that's what you're talking about. And there's like just developing that sixth sense, which a lot of it has to do with like skills and confidence, and then also knowing to how to be skillful in how you like work with it, how you touch on it in the room, and knowing when to work with whatever is in the room, and when to bring it back up at a later time. So I love that you said that, because essentially, like, that's part of the goal of this course, of me teaching you a brand new skill, even though there are new skills that we teach. But a lot of this course is actually teaching you that invisible skill that really helps you stand out as, hey, I got you, or hey, I'm talking about it. I totally didn't understand what you just said, right? Because I can tell that your body language seems like it didn't land. Can you try again? I really, right?
Mm-hmm.
That allows people to be known amongst their own colleagues and also with their clients as, this is someone who gets it, or who's going to try to really make sure to get it, because they're in my corner and they're committed. They also have that skill. So anyway, thank you for naming that, because I think honestly, that's one of the most important pieces.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just really impactful, and like to see people be able to ask you just like about their specific case and say like, okay, this is what's coming up. And then for you to notice some of the implicit things, and then for them to say, okay, well, how do I work with it? Like you're saying, like, when do I bring it into the room? When do I not? Why? Like all of those pieces. I think those are skills that are developed. It's not something that everyone just has. I'm sure some people do naturally have that, but yeah, I think it's a skill. And so it's really cool that that's something that you offer um, in this course. And there's so many other things, so I won't like go into it too much, um,
I would
but yeah.
second, I think the piece you're talking about is when we talk about case consultations, which is why we have the lengthy time now. Essentially, one of the big pieces, and I talk about this, like this training, it's a parallel process where like I'm kind of like sharing wisdom knowledge with you. I have my own consultants, so I'm also receiving, right? So I have my wisdom. So there's like, you're working with your clients. So when somebody brings in a case presentation, the first piece is like, I'm noticing what's coming up for you. Because when we create for the therapist to feel supported, then you can actually then help your clients. We're not just like, oh, let's talk about your client and skipping over you. And obviously when you're supported, or we process through your own blockage, you know,
Right.
and then that really helps you apply it to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
what were the questions that you had,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to touch on some of the questions too, because I know a lot of people will have these questions. So, one of the questions that I think is really relevant to this course is this course strictly only for trauma therapists.
Okay. So yeah, lots of people have reached out and said like, hey, I'm a life coach, or hey, I have gone through a lot of trauma. I'm not a licensed professional. Can I join? So I'm really flattered and grateful, or honestly, I should say inspired, that so many people want to themselves in their own healing journey. We do want to create like a program for this, but for right now, the specific um, cohort is people who professional. So, a social worker, psychologist, even if you're a psychiatric nurse practitioner, we had a physician's assistant that has a psychiatric background. So if you have that and you have direct care with clients, or you're working in some setting where you have direct contact with clients, families, individuals, then yes, then this group is for you. But yeah, it does require having that, just because we're working more specifically, obviously, on your role, but in your role and then doing clinical work or clinical informed work. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm hearing you correctly, it's like you don't necessarily have to be a trauma therapist, but still have your hand in that world to where you're being like a voice into that world, whether that's like you're an assistant to someone or um, like, I don't know, like a teacher or a counselor at a school, like those types of.
So I would say that has to be someone who's in the counseling role and is having direct contact with clients. Um, I would actually like maybe refine, or saying, oh, can I be like a new graduate? Or what about if I've been in the field for a decade? So what I say is this specific training is not for you if you're a newbie. Like if you don't know anything about trauma, or if you're just learning the basics of psychology, it's not going to be for you. It's a bit advanced. But it's also not for you if you're like a trauma expert, right? If you're a trauma expert, or if you're like at the expert level and you want to do like a 3-year intensive training, which we'll talk about, or something specific, then it's not the right fit. I want to make sure this is the right fit. This is for someone who has like understanding of psychology, is working in a clinical sense, and has an understanding, or is interacting with people who are reaching out for counseling, for support. And they understand the concept of trauma. You don't have to be a trauma therapist already, but that you already are working with trauma, or you're working with clients and you're working with anxiety, depression, family issues, anything across the board, and you want to really deepen your trauma skill set. People reach out. The people who reached out have said, like, I really want to feel more confident. I want to be more aligned with my professional integrity, and I want to feel like I'm being honest when I say that I'm trauma informed. So this training
Mhm.
is really thorough in terms of the history of trauma, the trauma terms, helping you really understand the biology of trauma. There's lots of visual aids, so you're getting the psychoeducation. But more than that, you're getting a lot of tools incorporate somatically, even knowing how to work with all the aspects of trauma impacts clients, and then real-time reality, working with
Mhm.
complexities like attachment, some interventions, shame, balance. We're not doing like a whole year. Like a lot of the topics we touch on, like I could do a training on shame for a year, right? I remember I once gave a presentation at a conference, and I took an hour and a half slot for talking about shame, and people were like, next time take a whole day. Take an hour, half a day. And I was like, okay. So there's a lot, I give enough of like, here you have like a really good sense, right? And for my own self, there's trainings that I've done. Like I did a comprehensive trauma training, and then I did more advanced trainings, but my steady framework of trauma healing or understanding trauma is basically, that's what I created here, like a creative combination of that. Okay.
Yeah, cool, cool. Thank you. Well, that's good. I think that's going to be helpful. And then I know a lot of other people are asking about like certifications, and also like a lot of people are interested in the somatic piece of what you present. And so do you get any kind of like certifications from this course? And is it a mostly focused on somatic? Is it more just integrated in? Kind of where does that land?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So first of all, you do get a certification. This specific format is pretty comprehensive. So at the end of the 6 months, then yeah, you get a certification, which is trained in integrative trauma treatment. And for those who are asking about CEUs, we are in the process of, they have to review all the documentation, and because it's so thorough, I have like a whole book that I wrote out with all the research. So that's being reviewed. So we should be giving CEUs just for those asking, but I'll have to follow up with that with more information about the somatic piece, right? So many people are reaching out and saying, is this a somatic training? Is this a somatic training? So I myself am very somatic informed. I've done lots of trainings in somatic therapy. I have 3 levels trained in somatic intervention, and I'm in my last year of sensory motor psycho. So I'm becoming a sensory motor practitioner. There are 3 years. It's really intense, where they teach us or lots of things about working somatically with the body, with child states, working with reducing symptoms of anxiety, working with trauma, working with memories, in a way where you don't have to necessarily touch on the specific trauma, so we're not re-traumatizing. So you're going to hear so much of like even the way that we engage with the content. It's through a very somatic lens. And so you're learning information, not just cognitively, like there's information I'm sharing, but there's a heavy focus on the somatic aspect. Even when you're sharing cases, what you'll see that I'll often check in somatically, or what's the body belief, or what's going on for you, right? Or what's there's a heavy somatic piece. But is this a 3-year somatic training? No. The 2 primary somatic trainings that people look at are their somatic experiencing, which is under Peter Levine, or their sensory motor psychotherapy by Pat Ogden. I mean, if somebody wants to do that 3-year training where it's a couple of years, that's very different. I personally went to a post-grad training to become trauma, like to have the trauma framework. And once I had the trauma framework, then I was like, oh, I want to dive deeper into the somatic aspect. But I'm trained in, it is integrative. I'll just say like, I'm trained in all 3 levels of EMDR, 2, and then the 3rd is attachment-based, and I'm at the consultant level, EMDR. And then I did 2 levels of IFS. So I have like a IFS booklet in here. It's a combination of a lot of what people are saying is that they have a more creative way of working with clients. So being able to talk in this language or understand somatically what the body is saying, understanding different parts of clients. So it's less confusing of like, why does my client have the symptom, or why are they treatment resistant? So I really teach a framework that I think makes treatment, number one, for the therapist, less confusing or tiring. So like notice, but also refreshed energy and help the clients feel more clear and intentional.
Yeah.
Because you're more intentional in the work. So that's
response. Yeah. That's something that I really noticed about the course too, and even just with like being on some of the phone calls and with the meetings, is that like the frame of a session and the structure of a session, like treatment goals, all that stuff, like how to plan it. Like, I don't know, like some people, I feel like maybe just, I don't know if they're not gifted in it or it's just not something that like they're really taught like as therapists, but I think it's so important for the therapist to have like a direction that they're going, and like also for the client to feel steady. And that's just something that I also like really valued. And I think a lot of the participants really valued is like, how do you like reframe if like the client's feeling really like confused or whatever, and then like reframing it, and just the structural piece, which sounds so practical, but I think is actually really clinical as well. Yeah.
I like that you're bringing that up. You know, I remember leaving graduate school feeling like, I know that I have a heart that cares, and I know that I have a mind that thinks, but how am I actually really going to help someone? And I remember feeling really insecure. On the one hand, really passionate, on the other hand, really insecure. And honestly, I had a reason to. And it was like, man, I remember one of my supervisors years ago said, it's going to take you 5 to 7 years to feel confident in the field. And like, on the one hand, that took a pressure off of me. On the other hand, I was like, seriously, that's how long it's going to take to be confident. And thank God I went to like advanced trainings. I got myself a really good therapist, which took time, but that was for my own self. But it was also like getting advanced trainings. And I do have to say, right, the beginning of the format, and I'll link it so anyone could look at like the teachable side of how we do it, is we really talk about in the beginning, right? What's your why, right? I think one of the most important pieces is, why are we in this field? Everybody has a different why. How does your journey impact how you show up in the room, right? And I think there's this other piece of, right, and it's in the beginning, like improving your clinical outcomes. I want to help you improve your clinical outcomes. And what that means is a good psychotherapist has an understanding, has a very clear treatment frame. And if you don't, we'll help you with this, right? You know, what's the contract? What's the framework that you're working under? What's the agreement that you have with the client? How often do you meet? What if something happens, right? Or if there's a shift in the relational dynamic? any kind of things that come up, because it's very clear, right? In our services agreement, it's like, this is expectations, this is what you might expect. So just naming all of that. And then there's the outcomes conversations, which is having conversations with all clients where you work, right? Of what can you expect? Sometimes
Right.
have unrealistic expectations, or therapists have unrealistic expectations, and then you're setting everyone up for failure.
Mm-hmm.
Work on certain treatment goals, or you have certain goals of working together. So having that clarity. So there's this whole video, right? Questionnaires for you about like having these outcomes conversations as part of the treatment. And then, we talk about a framework, because I think a lot of trainings don't teach you necessarily about how do you structure a session. Because on the one hand, you want to be flexible. On the other hand, there is
Right.
about having a therapist who's really intentional and mindful of, these were our treatment goals. I'm noticing the things we're talking about are this. Is this therapy up, or are we on a different path? And then let's contract on our treatment goals. And then you could be creative in that space. But having that clarity is really stabilizing, especially for people who've gone through a lot and people have been murky, and you don't want to be murky, right? And if
Mm-hmm.
treatment goals, go ahead and do that. Clarity is important. So thank you for,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So it's cool how you're talking about like an open kind of thing where you can still be creative and flexible, but also like a structured thing at the same time. And it is kind of nuanced, but it's really important for clients to feel stable. I know for me too, like if I'm in the therapy room and it feels like I'm leading the session entirely, then that's just like frustrating. So it's important, I think, for the clinicians to also be like, oh yeah, this is the direction we're going, or is it the direction we're going, and ask those questions. So, but I want to just touch, I know I traveled a different way, but back to the somatic piece. So I know a lot of people are interested in that part, and you said it's kind of integrated. So will people that take this course kind of get some somatic interventions? Will they get to practice some of that? Or is that not really something that's included?
Yeah. So there are somatic exercises that I teach you. There are a lot of somatic exercises that you learn, and there's some that we will practice, right? When it comes to case presentation, it's like, this is what we're going to work on. This is what we're going to try out. I've taken positive feedback and also helpful negative feedback, or whatever kind of feedback is helpful, and really incorporated some of like different kinds of skills and tools. So yes, there are going to be somatic interventions. There are already that people will learn. They're not all of them, right? Some of it also has to do with cases. So there might be like a specific client that somebody presents, or a reaction having, and I might just say like, hey, let's try this. And it will be a somatic intervention that I didn't put in the training, but it's like, here, you're going to learn from watching this video. You're going to learn from watching us talk about what's happening inside, right? Even the concept of, people know this thing called active triumph, which is basically when people go through a trauma, they have to feel like they have to renegotiate what happened. They weren't able to protect themselves or defend themselves, either with a push or with yelling or with crying, right? Usually it's like a push, or like the inhibited action that wasn't completed. Now there's a whole different piece that sometimes we have clients who have more developmental trauma, or they have ongoing neglect, or they're chronically ignored, or it wasn't, or the way that the trauma or the anxiety is trapped in their body is not about them having to have a session where they push against the wall, or shout a word like go away, or whatever, or run away, right? Because we do very creative interventions in session. There's something else called somatic sequencing. So sometimes part of good somatic work is also helping the clinician know when the body is actually sequencing, which essentially, like, often the body has to release certain sensations or emotions through the body, where it might be trembling, or there's certain sensations that are happening, and that could be just as powerful or even more powerful for that client than some like fancy somatic intervention. That in itself is an intervention. So a therapist might be talking about a case, and I'll notice that they are sequencing, or their body's starting to sequence through a certain emotional or somatic experience. And I'll guide them through it and be like, I just want to let you know what's happening. Or, wow, you're talking about this client. I'm noticing, I'm curious what was happening to this. Or you said her hand started twitching, so I'm going to be teaching along. A lot of it's also like the questions that are asked, but yeah, there is a lot of somatic aspects. But like I said, I'm not a somatic practitioner. I am working on becoming like higher level training in the sensory motor, and I might be practitioner there, but that's a very different kind of training.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I actually remember like the interventions that you're talking about with like the pushing and things like that. And I thought that was so fascinating too, even just thinking about kids even and how we like, I don't know, I was a nanny for a long time and you just kind of are like, no, like be quiet, or when they're upset, you know, you're just like stop. But really, like there's something happening that needs to move through their body and like get it out, whether that's like pushing or screaming in a pillow, or like there are proactive ways to do it to help guide them to regulate. And even adults too, like obviously we have the same system, you know, so just learning those things and learning, like it's helped me in my personal life of like, okay, like I actually need to like let this move through somehow instead of just try to like be an adult and shove it down. I need to find a way to release this. So I thought that was like a really cool intervention, which some people may already know, other people may not, but the
A lot of, sorry, I lost you for a minute. I think a lot of, or some of the somatic interventions, like some of it's a matter of like, right, obviously you're a parent or if you're a nanny or if you're an auntie or whatever it is, right? You can apply some of these interventions. Like I know with my kid, when he has very big feelings, I know that some, like we had an event, I think it was like a year or 2 years ago, where he was really upset. And a part of me was like upset, ashamed, frustrated that he had a big emotional reaction. And instead of me saying like, shush, I was like, I can tell there's a lot of energy in your body. Do you want to like, could you imagine that you're an animal? And he was like, no. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm going to pretend I'm an animal and I'm going to roar like a lion. And I literally was like, ah, I have so much energy. I did have energy because I was like, oh my God, my child. And then he's like, I can roar louder than you. And so we literally were roaring people. But guess what? When we were done roaring, and I was like, ah, you are louder than me. But we released that energy, which was really good. But I think one of the pieces, Laura, that you're talking about somatically is part of a good somatic therapist or a good psychotherapy is not just a matter of like old fashioned, they would say, go into the, right, old fashioned psychotherapy was like, go into the forest and shout up against the pillow. Good psychotherapy is essentially, or somatic informed psychotherapy, is that you want to be working with the right part of the client to engage in the relief. So I might come into really angry. My therapist says, okay, let's just push. But maybe I'm not angry. Maybe my boss said something that really got me upset. But maybe what's really going inside is that this is an experience I've had a lot in my life of being ignored. And maybe I have a 15-year-old self, or maybe as a 7-year-old self, I needed to say, Mommy, don't leave. And I have like a part of me inside that's very fragile. And anytime an adult doesn't listen to me, I get so sad and so angry. So a nuanced therapist doesn't just say, okay, so tell me the words you wish you told your boss. No, that might help me just for that session. If I really want to help, if I want relief or if I want to provide relief for my client, I'm listening to what they're telling me about what's happening here and now, and I could help them. But often if there's a very strong somatic reaction or very intense emotions, I'm going to listen, help provide relief, but I might dive a little deeper and say, it sounds like there's a lot there. I wonder if we can work with this part of you that wasn't heard, right? So, and then essentially it's not just about the push. Like when we're doing the somatic intervention, a skilled therapist also knows like which part are you working with and how are you engaging in that intervention, right? A lot of it is about setting, it's like setting up a stage, right? Like somebody could come and say like, great, we're shooting a TV show, but the background is wrong. And then I'm like, ah, right? Versus like, no, we're going to set it up, right lighting, and here we go. So a good therapy experience is not just a matter of like knowing interventions, it's understanding parts work like we spoke about, how you're applying it, ensuring that you have a good relationship and a trusting relationship, not just, right, like someone saying psychodrama, not just with the client, but also with the part of the client or the experience internally that you want to provide relief from. And that's the difference between people who have short-term relief to long-term relief. You know, it's like, even the other day somebody asked, you know, how do you work with DBT or people with borderline? And I think in my answer, I basically said, I actually saw this psychiatrist for years. I got consultation from him because I was working with complex clients with complex presentation who had seen DBT therapists and weren't experiencing relief or the interventions weren't working. And he had done a paper, which I actually linked in the YouTube video, which was basically you can apply skills to a client who might have a dissociative disorder or have different parts of themselves because right? It's not gonna land on the parts inside of them. So anyway, going on a ramble, but essentially good psychotherapy is being able to see 3D And that's part of what we talk about in this training, but essentially like knowing when to apply the intervention, when to go deeper, when to take a step back. Yeah, so.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love what you're saying, and it's so rich, and I feel like it gives people a little snippet into what they get because it is so specific and so catered to each case and each like client, and the therapist and what they're kind of bringing to the table, like you said. I also just feel like it kind of goes on the pieces that we talked about. Like there's that structural piece, there's like sixth sense piece, you know, where you have to kind of say, okay, I'm picking up this, like who am I working with, like which part, is it the right time to work with this part? Are they going to be flooded? Like, how can I titrate this? You know, there's so many like layers. And I think it really is so impactful to have therapists that have this support, that have this team, that have someone that's like a little bit step ahead of them that they can kind of reach out to and ask some of these really nuanced questions to. So I know we're like running out of time. So I have one final question and then we'll wrap it up. But what would you say, and we've maybe kind of already touched on this, but what would you say your main hope or goal would be for people that take this course to kind of like walk away with? Like, what would you be like, oh, I really want them to leave with this?
So if you take this course, if you sign up for this training, then my goal for you is that you, number one, own the knowledge you already have with a lot more confidence and just wisdom, flexibility. I also want you to be able to feel incredibly more comfortable with clients who come in with presentations that maybe before made you a little squirmish, you weren't sure if you could or you can't treat, having much more clarity on these are the clients and the presentations I'm really good at. These are the ones I need to refer out on, and these are the ones treating, but I just have to bring it to consultation.
Mm-hmm.
I can actually grow as a professional and as a person and also really support these clients. And the last one is really having a sense of community. You've seen some of the people, right? So part of being a good trauma therapist for the long run is that you have a network of really awesome, like-minded people. So developing connections with people who are doing similar work, some of the people from the past cohort, organizations or are working on creating organizations, and the knowledge is all about becoming trauma informed and spreading that. So you leaving this training is a matter of like feeling so much more confident, what your clients feel and your colleagues feel, and doctors, lawyers, or whoever you're interacting with, they feel that and they trust that more. So you get more of the right kind of people coming to your doorstep or wherever you're at. You feel more energetic because you feel like you can help them, and you preserve energy. You're showing up not from this place of burnout, but this is what I could do. This is out of my arena, and aligning with a higher level of professional integrity. And honestly, like feeling a sense of joy. We know like there's a lot of lightness and laughter and connection, but also a lot of wisdom. So that's what my hope is for people who sign up.
Yeah, yeah, that's so good. Yeah, and I do think that that is what people walk away with, you know, and like the testimonials, what people have said, is that they really did get that sense of support and even just that connection with you specifically, and feeling like, yeah, they just have a hand to hold in the world while they're leading other hands, you know?
Yeah,
So,
definitely. Just right now, I don't offer any one-on-one consultation, and the only way to get part of one-on-one consultation with me, or like the people who have taken these the training, I have like a place in my heart, and we are going to be creating like a referral list for people who are trained in this training, because I feel more comfortable referring to people around the world or with this level of knowledge, and I get to know them, right? And so I'm like, oh, I know this person, I know how they work, I know how they respond to situations. But also like I have almost this protectiveness of, okay, I'm going to or you have this question. People do also get this integrative psychotherapy book. Every module has this long booklet with images. We also have like a worksheet book where we organize the content from the books. There's a lot of interventions, handouts, psychoeducational aids that you get. So those are two awesome perks. I know in our own office we have these awesome psychoeducational aids, which really normalizes symptoms and also like different interventions for clients. So you get a lot of like real-time tools that you can print out and actually use with your clients, and like a booklet that, you know, teaches you the knowledge that you're learning. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, so cool. Well, thanks for coming on and letting me pick your brain and ask some of these questions. I hope that it was helpful for some of the people that are interested, and even other therapists out there that just want to learn more and hop on. So, yeah.
Yeah. Laura, thank you so much for your time. Let me just tell people, right, the way that it works when people apply, because we've had lots of different applications. Once you apply, then we respond and then we give you a 15-minute free consultation where you hop on a call with me to make sure that this is the right training for you. We don't want you signing up if it's not for you, and we do want you signing up if it is going to give you exactly what you need. So that's the next step. If you already did, apply, but you haven't set up a call, it's a free 15-minute call. You'll walk away clearer on what it is that you need. And if I'm not the right address, then I will do my best to give you other resources because I am committed and passionate about helping people find the right resources. So those are the next steps. And yeah, Laura, thank you for this conversation. If anyone has any questions, obviously feel free to get in touch. And then we'll do our best to answer. Thank you, Laura, for
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Everybody has a great rest of your Thursday.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.